Welcome. This is the Property Preservation Show, Insider Show. Last week, we shared some real horror stories in our effort to expose the true problems in our industry. This week, we're going to begin our deep dive into what really happens when a vacant home is handed over to the property preservation industry. Now, let me turn it over to Brian and Mary. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Mary. I'm with Steel Preservation.
My name is Brian. I am with Elite Preservation. So with today comes the daunting task of what does a property preservationist do when a property becomes vacant and turns over from the bank to our companies. There are several different things that the bank uses to reattain the properties. One of those is cash for keys, which we touched about a little bit, and we'll go a little bit more in depth with on this show this morning.
So, cash for keys is one of the few ways that the bank reclaims the property. When it comes to cash for keys, this is where they get in contact with the current homeowner and they kind of make a deal with the homeowner. We will pay you this much so you can sign over the deed to us. There is a process that you have to go through for cash for keys. Usually they will send a deed in lieu inspection to a property preservation company. And when you get that work order, you will go out to the property. Usually the homeowner is still there and they will walk around the house with you. And I've only done a handful of these. So I do know that it has to be completely free of debris. I think they give you maybe up to 3 cubic yards. Mm-hmm. So when you do your inspection, you have to make sure that you check every room, every outbuilding, attics, basements. If you do not check these areas, and if there is debris found in these areas, that will now become your responsibility, because that is the whole point of the deed in lieu inspection, is to make sure that the home is pretty much in what they call conveyance condition, which means the yard is being maintained. There's no significant damage to the house. I do believe they have like a dollar amount when it comes to the damage. I do know the one client that I've worked with that's done this, they have like up to a certain amount when it comes to the damage. And then you will also have a checklist that you have to fill out and you have to turn that back into the bank. They will make a deal with the homeowner after you do your inspection. If everything looks good, they will send you a check to hand over to the homeowner, but only after the deed in lieu inspection is completed and has passed. If it does not pass, you do not hand over the check. You have to call your client and let them know what you found out, and then they will tell you the next steps that you have to take.
And a lot of real estate agents handle these more so lately than ever, because the bank really wants to transfer and get these things sold as fast as possible. So that's one big thing. And as Mary said, we have done so many of those things in time, and that's one of the critical things that always comes up and bites you, is make sure you're doing your inspections properly. Make sure you're going into every closet. Make sure you're checking the roof. Make sure you're checking the gutters. Make sure you're checking for broken windows, cracked windows, making sure every nook and cranny is clean and basically in a for sale condition. Because again, ultimately, it is, your responsibility as the contractor doing it. And we've ran into several properties where the real estate agent really didn't care. Handed over the check because he wanted the listing, and then we ended up having to pull another 10-15 yards out of a property because, again, they didn't check. But that is a very simple way.
There's also a property that we went to where they made the deal with the gentleman, and there's supposed to be up to maybe 3 or 5 cubic yards of debris, and we arrived at the house and you can see through the windows that
Oh yes.
The rooms were absolutely packed. Like, it looked like a hoarder house from the
Yeah.
outside, but he had already struck the deal with the bank, told them, yeah, it's ready to go, it's clean, this, that, and the third. And
Hmm.
there was stuff everywhere. So we had to walk away and call the client and be like, no, there's a ton of stuff here, and had to end up ripping up the check.
And that was one of those things too, where the homeowner, was trying to get over on the bank, not feeling there was going to be an inspection of any kind,
Mm-hmm.
not to feel anything. It's just like, hey, yeah, we're good. Send me my $5,000, $10,000, which I've also heard deed and lieu's going up to $22,000 for them to get out of the house. Because again, with the eviction costs, lawyer costs, the trash outs, and everything else, there's evictions are expensive, so they
Yes.
utilize those cash for keys situations to try to make it cheaper. Now, the last thing that we kind of have in our situation where we are reclaiming or claiming properties, number one, again, we have the eviction process. We have the cash for keys process. The other one that we do, which is very, very common, is just basically abandoned home initial secures. We touched a little bit about this before, which we're going to go a little bit more in depth of. The really ins and outs of the mechanical gears of doing an initial secure. These have the greatest liability to our industry and to our company because technically you are breaking into a home. So you better make sure that you do your research, your research, and your research.
Yes, there is a lot of back office stuff that happens when initially receiving an initial secure order. One of the biggest things that you need to do is look up who the homeowner is. Kind of find out the story of the property. Find out, did this person go to jail? Did this person pass away? Is this person still alive but maybe moved? Um, you kind of have to see what's going on there before you move forward with anything. Look for obituaries, do your Zillow search. Another thing that we do for just about every single initial secure is a GIS survey, and we look up the tax map. This also helps with your property lines when you're doing different work at properties. So that is something that we use on almost a daily basis.
And that's one thing too. Just Google the county you're in and GIS map, and it'll bring you up to the tax. It'll bring you up to the county's website, and you can navigate through. The biggest thing is that you can find out who owns the property and correspond that with a search and also your work order. So Mr. Smith owns 555 Main Street. We go do a GIS mapping survey, and then we find out that Mr. Peters owns the property now, so it raises points. Again, communication does not happen as quickly in our industry as we would like.
No,
It takes
no.
months for things to happen. A quick little funny story is I went to a property. This was for PNC Bank. Started doing my thing, started looking around, figuring out what's going on with the property. Come to find out through the processing that the neighbor next door had bought this house at sheriff's sale over 6 months ago and paid cash for this property. And here it is, the bank that had the mortgage is sending a representative back out to do another initial secure. They didn't do any of their research. So just because you receive a work order doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean they did their inspection. It doesn't mean they sent a bunch of letters. It doesn't mean they've contacted anyone. They just sent you out there. So always go in eyes wide open, knowing that there could be a homeowner in there. There could be a squatter in there. The house could be perfectly fine. In fact, actually, we just did an initial secure a week ago, 2 weeks ago. This was in a larger city, and this was the nicest property on the block. It wasn't a great block to begin with, but this was the nicest kept property. There was no garbage, not even a wrapper in the yard. The trash cans were clean. The property was freshly painted and nicely clean. There was fresh air conditioners in the windows. And what I mean by that is you can tell when an air conditioner's been sitting there for years and years and years. They collect debris. They are dirty and nasty. This house was the perfect one on the block. I'm like, yeah, I'm not even going to bother wasting my time. I'm just going to kind of walk away from this one. I don't feel right about this one. I'm sitting there in my truck, And lo and behold, the owner comes walking out. Yep, there you go. So there it is. So always remember, no one does research for you. It is your responsibility to handle this. And again, these are the most dangerous properties we go into. Remember, a few weeks ago, we touched on the story about a gentleman from Virginia who was shot and killed while doing work for the bank. We don't know the specifics of the situation, but it goes also into there. You are literally breaking into somebody's house. So make sure the house is abandoned. Make sure you are clear and good to go. Do your back end research, do your office research, follow the steps and procedures and outlines to make sure you stay safe. Because at the end of the day, it's a job, it's a business. It's not worth your life. It's not worth your limbs. It's not worth your health. Yeah, it might be worth a few gray hair, but we're not gonna get into that.
Depends on the day.
Yeah, it depends on the day, depends on the property. And it is hilariously funny because, also one of the key things we always instruct and tell people is, print your work order out. Have your representative, whoever your account manager is at your clients, make sure you have them, you are able to contact them. Make sure you have someone to contact. Make sure you have a number. So again, if you're at a home and the police are called, to do an investigation, you have everything you need to continue your job, not leave in cuffs. Because again, you are breaking into a home that is owned by Mr. and Mrs. Smith. But Mr. and Mrs. Smith, through your GIS surveys, they still own the property. You do a lookup, you do a find, you find out that Mr. and Mrs. Smith got divorced. And you find out that Mr. Smith now lives 3 cities over and Mrs. Smith moved into a different state. And again, here are your critical signs of your occupancy, which we spoke about in previous shows. You're going through the process to eliminate the possibility of occupancy. Because again, if there's a hint, if there's a theory, if there's a thought, great. Take pictures, walk away. Walk away. Because at the end of the day, you do not want someone behind that door with a gun. You do not want someone behind that door with a knife that is now going to feel, they're defending themselves, So again, this is one of the most dangerous things that we do in this industry. Well, sometimes. But always make sure you're on point. So verifying your work order. In fact, actually, this is another funny story. We just had a work order about a week ago come in from one of our larger clients, and it got canceled in 2 days, the next day. So we called in. We're like, hey, what's going on with this order? Just seeing what's happening. They're like, yeah, it got canceled. No problem. A week later, shows up again. Call again. It was like, hey, what's going on with this work order? Are we doing it or not doing it? What's going on? And the client's not ready for procedure. So something in that is causing them to pull that work order back. So when we do get the work order, it's going to be ultra careful on what's going on. Because again, they're having issues on their end. Is a family member's contacting them? Is something going on? Is a lawyer contacting them? We don't know. So always go in expecting someone living there, always go in expecting to find the worst in some of those points. But when you get to the property, you've done all your back research, everything is looking good. You're running through your signs of occupancy. What does the grass look like? Is the power on? Is the water on? Any cars in the driveway? What does your mapping say? What's going on? What's happening? Is it for sale by Zillow? Are they trying to close a deal, which is a whole other topic? But again, the biggest tool that we have in our bag, which we have discussed so many times, is knock, knock, knock. Biggest thing is talk to the neighbors. If you are not getting any resolve from the neighbors because it's at a different time, someone's not home, what we always do is we actually take our painter's tape, which we've discussed, and we tape up all of our locks just so that way we have evidence that there's entry being made into the property. So we'll come back another day. We'll talk to the neighbors again. We'll attempt to, and ultimately, like I say, if you do not have clear 100% verification, walk away. At the end of the day, if you cannot prove it 150%, don't do it. Don't do it. Make sure you're at your right house 150%. There are thousands of ways to figure out if you're at the right house. Make sure you're at the right house. Make sure nobody's home. Make sure they left, they moved out, they passed away, something happened, and you are now clear to go. We're not going to get into how to actually do an entry point into a property. We have that in our training courses. We show you how to do a non-destructive and destructive method on entry into a property. At any point, you do not destroy the property itself, but you destroy the locking systems, the doorknobs, the deadbolts, et cetera. And, you know, we have computerized locks, keypad locks, fingerprint locks, standard locks, key locks, remote locks, and everything else kind of locked. But trust me, if you know what you're doing, you can get into them very quickly. The other thing, too, is identify your entry points into the property. Identify your work orders. Some work orders require front door access. On a final secure, which is prelude or after the effective initial, but sometimes, like, the banks will purchase the house or deal with that in a sense, and they want a final secure done because the bank now owns it, so we're going to lock all the doors. Pay attention to your work orders. What is your key code? Make sure you have the proper tools for the job you are doing. Make sure you have the proper supplies for the job you are doing. I cannot tell you how aggravating and frustrating it is that the nationalized companies are sending people in and they don't even have the proper locks to do their job. It's annoying, people. Buy your locks. Get your numbers right. Get the key codes right. Get the lockbox codes right. And by the way, lockbox is like one of the worst paying products in this industry. It always has been, always will be. And again, with our inflation that we've had in our country, prices just keep going on and on and on and on and on, up, 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 up. But what never goes up is our pay prices. Look around. We're going to be starting a training program. We're going to be starting a instructional guide program plus a membership program very shortly. And we're going to expose all the secrets of 15, 16 years worth of experience in this industry, the ups and downs, the ins and outs, having, 70 subcontractors running all over the place for you, making millions of dollars down to COVID era where we can barely get a grass cut out. So we're going to expose the truth. We're going to expose the lies that you are being told by your national clients and your other clients. We're going to tell you how to get the work, how to find the work. And that's kind of what this program is about, is to give everyone a little bit of insights on the industry itself as a whole. And also, again, if you want to be better, as they always say, find someone who's doing better than you and listen. And that's what I've done over the years too, is finding, those people in our industry that have kind of like passed on and moved on because they're tired of it. Then you have those few people, those very few people that have been in for more than 10, 12, 15 years. And we are rare. Trust me, we are rare. They don't want to share the information with a bunch of people who's not going to listen to them anyway. So that's why we're kind of moving along with this, to try to change our industry as a whole, to make it better, to try to encourage and educate the upcoming group of people inside of our industry and show them how to make money and how to save money. People always complain, they have to go to a box store, an orange store, a blue store, and buy their lock boxes, and they're paying $23, $25 for them, and we're only getting paid, 18 to 20. I don't. I think we pay $5 for our lock boxes.
Something like that, yeah.
So, and again, even with your locks and stuff, there are so many things you can do to save money and to get things done. So, sorry, driving off track a little bit with that. But once again, as we go into the work orders, we're at our property, we're looking around, we've checked with everyone. Neighbor next door said, yeah, they moved out years ago. They've been sitting around, but the grass is being maintained, which the neighbors are doing, which you find out from your story. So we find our entry point to our property. We figure out what we're going to do. Oh, we have a locked door. The biggest thing, too, is with these properties, you'd be very surprised on how many of these things are unlocked, how many windows are unlocked. And I have done tens and tens of thousands of initial secures over my career. And I mean that literally. I've been doing this since 2012, so you do the math. The biggest thing is look at your windows. Check them. Check your doors. You would be surprised. But once you've gained entry into the property, the biggest thing is announcements. And make sure if anyone is in that property, they know you're coming. we yell and we scream as we go through these properties. Property preservation technician, is anyone home? Is anyone here? Hello. Before you even enter that property, before you go inside of that property, your head is in there yelling and yelling and yelling. You're listening. You're listening for the scurrying. You're listening for the, hey, what are you doing? Or whatever. And we've been in situations too where we're literally drilling out locks and the door opens up. Huh? The only indicator that someone was there was the power was on. Come to find out, that wasn't quite so. There's a little squatting situation going on there that we didn't quite. But again, we left. We replaced the locks and left. So you never know what you're getting into when you get into these things. So always announce yourself. Walk through that house. Open the door, open the screen door, make sure it stays open. You want to identify where the front door is. You're yelling and screaming, property preservation. Is anyone in here? Is anyone in here? You're walking to the front door. You're opening the front door. You're opening the front screen door. Why? You're preparing yourself for exit. You're preparing yourself if you have to vacate that property very quickly because there's a squatter upstairs, or the garage door was left open and there's a big mama dog upstairs with her pups, who's kind of wild and feral. You want to make sure you can get your butt out of that house very quickly. And again, make sure you clear the house. Start on your first floor. Okay. Once you get your first floor, go into your second floor. Once you go into your second floor, check all your closets, check everything. Go up into your attic and then walk your way back down into the basement. The reason why you don't go into the basement first, or go into the main floor and go into the basement, is you're kind of trapped in that basement. So you always want to make sure you start center, top, and then go into your bottom areas. Hopefully it doesn't have a basement, and we don't really check for occupancy and crawl spaces, but it does happen, I guess. So once you're making sure that you're safe, make sure you got flashlights. You don't know what you're getting into as far as trip hazards, things like that. Go slow. Make sure you're announcing yourself all the way through. Check every corner, every closet, because you don't want to feel comfortable, start doing your thing, and next thing you know, someone's hiding in the closet and they're going to give you a big surprise. So, but as you're kind of going through the house, you are now cleared. Everything is good to go. We do actually have signs. They're very inexpensive to make. They're very simple. They're pretty cool too. Nice and orange and bright. They're just simple yard signs that you can pick up. But we utilize those signs to put them out front. So that way, if the neighbors are seeing something, they know what's going on. If the cops are called, the police are called, they show up, at least there's some indication there's a work truck. The doors are wide open. The blinds are open. You know what I mean? There's a generator running, and there's, a couple signs sitting out there, plus, Bob's Preservation Service on your truck. It calms them down, so that way also accidents aren't happening. And yes, I have been at gunpoint with police a few times in my career. The biggest thing is you're doing your job. They are doing their job. They don't know you. At least they're police officers. They have some kind of rules and regulations to deal with. So listen to their commands and let them know that you are working on an abandoned home. This is your job. And this is also why you have a printed work order. Hey, my work order is right here in the mailbox, because I personally always do that, because I don't want them in my truck. I don't want them anywhere. I don't want to reach into my pockets. When I make sure the house is clear, we put up our notification stickers. Every company has them, they're window stickers. We put them in, and then I take the work order, stick it in the mailbox, stick it by my entry door, tape it to the door, whatever. So that way, if the police are coming, they see a work truck with Bob's Preservation Service. They see a work sign that says Property Preservation Technician at Work. I've collaborated my story with the neighbor Bob across the street. And again, my work order is setting on the door. The door tag is in place. It validates your story. And that's the key thing, because you don't want to go to jail. You don't want to go in cuffs. You're doing a job. And that's really all it is. But once you kind of start your initial security, you've changed your locks, you've taken the proper photographs, you put your lock box on, you're rocking and rolling, things are getting done, depending on, are you cutting grass, are you doing the winterizations? But you need to go into that property with full anticipation of making money. There's a couple ways we do that. Number one is just by your simple bid process. Certain clients have bid after the facts, which we're going to get into in just a second. But certain clients have bid after the fact. The biggest thing I need to stress with this is make sure you know your clients' allowables. Okay, that's the biggest thing. And Mary's going to get into that a little bit more just as soon as I'm finished up. But with bidding process, one of the tips that we always teach is when you go to the properties, you got your blue tape. We use yellow. Take your blue tape, tape it up on the walls, room 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, living room, dining room, whatever you want to call it. Get your laser tape out, click, click, get your measurements going, and then do a brief synopsis. Mold, debris, 15 yards, whatever, so on and so forth. Roof leak, whatever. You know what I mean? You're not writing a Bible. You're not writing a book. You're very simply just tagging a room for future referencing, so that way your processing team, your bidding team, or you, as you're doing 10 of these, can go through and be like, oh, yeah, I remember that. That's the living room, the red room, got it. But if the room has a label, the room has a size, and then you are able to bid off of those points and develop that when you are revisiting the property in your bid process. Or, again, if you do use a very good bidding company or a processing company, they're going to be able to write higher and more accurate bids, so they're not shorting you. They're not going way over, because you got fisheye lens on your camera. Next thing you know, everything looks 10 times bigger, and they're bidding for 1,500 square foot when it's really a 10 by 10 room. So being more proficient, being more professional. Another great tip, you can go to the dollar stores, you can go to the box stores, you can go to the Walmarts and stuff, Amazon, and just pick yourself up a small whiteboard, about the size, a little bit smaller than a piece of paper. I don't have one with me. But that's a very simple thing. Living room, 12 by 15, so on and so forth. Click. Then I take my pictures throughout the property. And then this way, as you go back, that's your starting point. So every room is different. Every room that you're in, the measurements, the size. You can jot down notes of what's wrong with it. It's erasable. You're not going to be going through a tablet a week worth of paperwork or worth of paper. Very simplistic, very easy. But again, look for the opportunities also, internal and external. Shrubs. If you don't have allowables and things aren't given, some companies are, just bid everything you can. Pay attention to hose caps, shrubs, trees, gutters. These are the maintenance foundations of the property. Okay, they're not going to give you a trash out order in 5 seconds. They're not going to give you the trash out order tomorrow, but they will give you the food, because again, who wants rotting food in the house? And please, come here. Please do me a favor, everyone. Open your refrigerators. I don't care if you do it at the end of your job or beginning of job. Open your refrigerators, please. Take pictures. I cannot tell you how many houses we have gone in. Maybe people just don't want to deal with it, and that's okay. I like my money. I like making money. But they leave. This house was trashed out. It was been in preservation for 4 years. I want to say 3 or 4 years, and nobody opened up their freezer.
That's crazy to me.
And don't get me wrong, it's disgusting. It's horrible. It's not something pleasant. But you know what you do? You put on your gloves. You put on your bigger gloves. By the way, I hate to say this. This is kind of funny. We use veterinarian gloves. When they do pregnancy checks and so on and so forth. We all seen them on the the Animal Planet TV shows and stuff. But they literally come all the way up to your shoulder. You know what I mean? And it's so nice. You've got your regular latex gloves on that you buy, and then we have these arm length gloves that you use. So that way, when you go into those refrigerators that are really nasty and disgusting, you got to reach all the way in the back. You don't get all of this all over you. If you know, you know. Simple little trick. It is so nice. You chuck them off. You throw them in your garbage bag when you're done. Tie everything up. But the cool part is that you're not smelling that for the rest of the day. It is on you. Another thing we do is, again, we have like disposable aprons. Little things, they're not that expensive, but it does help make the day go a little bit better when you've got to do some grass cuts after that. But again, finding out what's wrong with the property, these are the critical things on initial secures, because your bids will be coming off of initial secures. If you are not making $10,000 to $20,000 per property through its lifetime, you are doing it wrong. End of discussion. Plain and simple. I don't care who you work for. Now, granted, I might admit there are certain clients that'll take your wonderful pictures and your wonderful bids and then ship them out to the cheapest, worst contractor out there that drives a Cadillac Escalade. to a property. I'm not saying anything wrong against Cadillac Escalades, but a pickup truck works so much better in our job, especially when you have to haul around tree debris and plantings. But yeah, we're not going to get into that. So, but anyway, bid. Find everything you can. Take pictures of every nook and every cranny, the attic space, everything, because you never know what is laying around, what is there. And this is your opportunity to make money at these properties. So with that, let's talk about bid after the facts.
Okay, so bid after the facts. Usually, most clients will give you bid approvals, which bid approvals is when you go to a property, you take your photos, you submit your bids, they take your bids, send them off to the client approves the work, the price that you bid, and then they send you back the work order. Now, bid after the fact is when they send you to a property with a list of allowables. And every national company that I know of that I've worked with has a list of allowables. So make sure when you're signing up with these companies that you get their list of allowables. You know what's on their list, what they're paying. Make sure you get their allowables and price sheets. That's very important. So what this is they will give you your list of allowables and they'll tell you to go to the property, do what you can, print out your invoice, send it in. So pretty much what you're doing is you're completing the work first before you've ever even been approved for anything. And then they will either pay you whatever the allowable is, or they will take your invoice and submit it to their client, and then you have to wait for their approval. I am not a huge fan of bid after the facts. My one client uses them heavily. Normally, I will take their allowables. The guys will go to the property. They'll take photos and we'll still bid a lot of this because their allowables do not pay what should be paid. So, and the really sad part and the really tough part about bid after the fact is you've already done the work. You've already paid for the gas. You've already spent your time. You've spent the day, 2 days, whatever it is at the property doing all of this work. And then they only want to pay you what they feel like paying you. Bid after the facts are not one of the things that I really like to do.
And I want to jump in and agree with that because at the end of the day, there are a lot of great companies out there that use bid after the facts to maximize profitabilities. The biggest thing is that feeling comfortable with your client, knowing their situation. You don't want to sign up with a client and then they give you a whole list of bid after the facts, and now you've just done, $5,000, what you feel is $5,000 worth of work, but come to find out that the 300 linear foot worth of shrubbery that you had just trimmed and spent all day making it look beautiful and wonderful and all the other good stuff, and you've got 4 yards worth of debris, let's just say that, a little bit of a pickup load there worth of clippings. And next thing you come to find out when you charge for the 300 linear foot worth of shrubbery, you know what I mean? They're only going to pay you the debris. Because if you read the work order, it says, we pay by debris on this, not by linear foot. There are clients out there. I've had many battles where I've spent an hour and a half cleaning something up and dealing with something and generated 2 yards worth of debris. And next thing you know, I'm getting pennies. Nah. But what was I going to do? I didn't read the work order. Utilizing bid after the fact is a very great thing because, as Mary said, they write the bids and then a month later you might get it. The property might sell. Or again, they might send somebody else. But then also, how worse is the property going to be? The grass, and that's another thing, make sure that you are bidding and understanding that grass grows. So when you bid that 3 foot grass, plan on it being 3.5 foot when you cut it. But there's that time delay there. And sometimes you may never get it. So bidding after the fact is great once you know your client. talk to your client, get them on the phone, say, hey, this is what's going on, this is what's happening, what should we do? We just hit so many properties, we can't stop. When we go out and our crews are sent out, we just can't stop in the middle of the day to rearrange the whole plan to go do all this stuff. That's why we bid. We hit it, we move back, we come back, because we have such a high rate flow. We have such a flow. We just have to turn and burn and get moving to the next one because it's already preset. We don't have a house and anticipate being there all day. Initial secures we hit, we move on to the next, so on and so forth. So, but bid after the facts are a great thing. I know contractors that make a ton of money doing bid after the facts, but they're very well educated with their client. Very well educated. And they call them, hey, I got this. This is what we need. This is what we need. This is what we need. Are we still good? Yeah, we're good. As long as your pictures prove it. Remember, if your pictures don't prove it, it never happened. Take measurements, pictures, more pictures, and more pictures after that. Remember, our industry drives only on pictures. But again, just make sure that you are comfortable and you know what's going on with the particular client you have. So there is one thing that bothers me so much in our business, and it really gives a lot of us bad names. This industry is hard enough as it is, with horrible pricing from our national clients that rake in billions of dollars. It's horrible that we have to eat inflation. When lumber goes up, my price doesn't go up because they won't pay it. They will find someone to do it. It'll be done wrong, but it'll be done, and they don't care. Example, replace the locks. They will use whatever locks they can find. Do window boardings. Cool. We'll just use a piece of wood and one 2x4 and one carriage bolt, but it's up. Even though in 2 months I got to go fix it. Patching roofs and things like that. But at the end of the day, we have to deal with so much in our industry, and it is a very profitable industry. It's a very lucrative industry. No matter how you cut it, no matter how you think about it, I've been doing it a long time, and I have made tons of money. And anyone with common sense and a little bit of education as far as training goes can do this job. You don't need a master's degree in engineering to go do this job. You need drive, education. You need to be trained. You need to know what's going on, and you need to be thorough, and you need to be on point, and you've got to move very quickly. And that's one of the key things in our industry. This is a very, very, very fast-paced industry. But one of the biggest problems that we have is theft. And I want to address this very clearly. You go to a house on an initial secure, even to a trash out. Nothing in that house belongs to you, the contractor, boots on the ground. Nothing. Not the pen, not the piece of tape, not the duct tape, not the bowls, not the couch, not the dresser, not the money, especially not the guns. I cannot tell you how many guns we have found in properties. You call the cops. Period. You don't leave them there. I don't understand why people do that. You don't leave guns there. You do not take them home. That's felony. You go to jail. And more importantly, you don't try to sell them. Felony. You know what I mean? But so many people go into these properties, and for whatever reason, they rob these houses. We've touched base on stories before in the past. There was a gentleman, his high school buddy and him, they bought houses beside each other. They married kind of at the same time. They went on vacations together. They were lifelong friends. 40 years later, the gentleman passes away. His friend passes away. It's horrible. Property goes into preservation because kids don't want to deal with it. It happens all the time. And this company, this sub-company, this contracting company, a local, sends contractors in to do work. And basically it gets to, the guy's dead. Take whatever you want. That opens up the bank. That opens up the national client to such high liability. It's disgusting. I have seen the processes on back and forth. I've done the police. I've had to deal with the police reports. We've had to, act as a witness because we went in and did the initial secure. We had to verify through witnessing that these items were here. We've been through the drama, we've been through the saga, but then also getting back to the story is here that, here's the neighbor, the lifelong friend, watching all of his deceased friend's items get just chuckled out. It was so bad. This contracting company had someone in a Subaru with a wheelchair ramp on the back and the tailgate, in the hitch. They're loading up the guy's firewood. Come on. Really? But no, the neighbor called the cops. The neighbor called these people. The initial, the national client was calling us. We're like, hey, do you use so-and-so? We're like, no, we don't use so-and-so because so-and-so is a thief. We follow these people throughout, we all work in the same area for all the same people, and I'm guaranteeing you he's a thief. They steal stuff. Oh, yeah, we're going to get them out. 3 months later in a different territory, guess who we find? Them again. You got to love it. But remember, nothing in these houses belong to you, and nothing in these houses are worth your contracts. Even on trash outs, if you read your national contract, it clearly states that you have to dispose. This is personal property law. Okay, so Bob bought a couch, put it in his house. Bob died. You are now going in there. You have the trash out order. That couch has to go to the dump. Why? It's called profiteering. You cannot profit from these houses by selling items because these items do not belong to the bank, do not belong to you. They belong to Bob, the homeowner, plain and simple. With a trash out order, it is not, hey, go start a yard sale. Hey, go to the auctions, which I know a lot of us do. But trust me, the national clients are getting sued and the national clients are kicking back. There is a program going on, and trust me, it is here. They have a project going on where they're cracking down, where they are literally setting up hidden cameras and planting stuff in houses. It's happening because they are tired of paying out and settling millions of dollars worth of lawsuits because of sticky fingers on an initial secure, sticky fingers on a house that literally the next door neighbor is watching you rob. Doesn't work that way. You are there to do a job, not go shopping. Please remember that, because it makes it more difficult for everybody else. Do the job you're paid to do. If you're not getting paid enough money, don't do it. If you can't figure out how to make money, reach out and talk to us. We have all kinds of shortcuts, all kinds of things that we have learned over the years to make it profitable. And we are profitable. We work with every major national client. We have established training programs, which we're going to be introducing into the public shortly. And we have been in this business for 14, 15 years. I know how to do this, So that's where we get into, we are trying to change the industry as a whole to make it better. Not just with boots on the ground, but also with nationals. We want to call nationals feet to the fire. We want to reach out to HUD and our Congress people who are in charge of those oversight committees. It's like, hey, why are these people keeping all of the money and paying us so little? We want an investigation. We are working with these things inside of our industry to change it. And that's why, again, this show was kind of born as a point of reference, as a touching point, so that way we can have contact together. We can, in a unified format, the good contractors, boots on the ground, can have one singular voice and say, hey, this isn't right. You guys are getting paid $175 for a grass cut. We're getting paid $50 for. What entitles you to 75% of the money? Because that's what it is. And then you sit there and complain that, stuff isn't done right. So that's what this is for. But we need to make a change on the boot side first, because that's a little bit easier. I won't deny it. But like I say, the national companies are cracking down. I had a funny story once with one of the regionals I work with. There was a real estate agent next door, has a Ring camera. And my friend's technician went into this property. And, we all carry stuff in, tape, screwdrivers, things like that. And the technician left with a roll of duct tape. It's a roll of duct tape. He thought it was his. Like I say, I go in with all kinds of stuff sometimes. But regardless, there was a claim made against the contractor that he stole that duct tape because the neighbor has it on his Ring camera, and he's a real estate agent. He works in foreclosures. That's how it's getting. Banks are also, like I say, setting up hidden cameras. They're setting up bait. They're setting up traps to catch people so that way they can prosecute. So please remember, you're there to change locks, do a winterization, not go shopping. And when you get those trash out orders, throw the stuff away. Because when they find the stuff on eBay, when they find the stuff on Facebook Marketplace, yeah, we just don't want to be in that boat. So do a better job. And, you know, the lawsuits that the banks have to incur are crazy. And all of this was kind of started back in the 08 region when banks were really aggressive with clearing properties out way before they actually owned them through sheriff's sale, through deed in lieu, you know, through evictions. And these companies were being sued for millions and millions of dollars because, oh, you throw away, you know, my precious great grandma pearls that are worth $20 million that I had in my upper dresser drawer, and you threw the dresser away, so now it's your liability. So again, it gets into one of those situations. It is best leave the stuff alone. Leave the stuff alone and stop stealing. If you need more money, work an extra day. It's just crazy what we see through the time. Mary, let's talk about our train house. This is one of those stories that it's really heartbreaking, and it's actually really disgusting. So
yes, so we have a property that we have been going to for years, initial secure and on. I would say for maybe about 2.5 years, everything was great at this house. The gentleman that used to live here was very, very big into trains. He had a huge collection. He had stuff up on his walls. He had stuff on bookshelves. He had stuff packed very neatly, very organized in boxes and bins and totes. And I would say maybe about a year ago, right around a year ago, someone started breaking into this house. And I don't mean once and I don't mean twice. It has been at least a handful of times.
And magically, I want to say this real quick. When you say breaking in, it's really funny because initially when all this was going on, there was no forced entry. So they had keys. So what
yes, when it first started, but we would see that a window had been left open or the windows were unlocked. And then it started to, we said something to our client and we went and we changed the locks and we changed the lockbox code. Well, then we started arriving to the property and the door was kicked in. And then the next time the door was punched in, someone punched a hole through the door. So for 2.5 years, this property sat quietly and nothing happened. And then all of it, and this is all within like maybe a 3 to 4 month time span. And now when you walk into this property, it looks like absolute chaos. Things have been rummaged through, all the doors, all the cabinets, everything is open. It looks like somebody just went in there and started throwing stuff everywhere. Like now it is just, it's a holy mess.
They cut all the copper out of the property. Again, they had destroyed a lot of stuff. There's a car in the property. They're trying to evacuate. They're trying to get out. You can tell they were messing with it. This gentleman had like this massive room full of just a train track setting that he built, a whole little town and city. It was amazing to see the detail the gentleman put into it. But again, these people were literally stealing the tracks off of this. And we're not talking like 1 or 2 little train sets that he bought at Walmart. Our estimations in all reality is you're probably looking at about $30,000 to $40,000 worth of collectible train that is now all gone and stolen. And knowing that, we as a preservation company come in and we do our thing, but then also we know there's inspectors coming in. And being when we started to see the initial aspect of theft coming into the properties, there was no forced entry.
No, not
So
at
what does that
first.
tell you? And what does that tell you? And it's sad because literally this house has been stripped. So what's the big deal? It's just the bank. Yeah, but the problem is that when the bank has to settle that or deal with that situation or spend $10,000 to replace the copper, that's less money they're going to spend on a property somewhere else, you know. But it's also the point of somebody went in there and basically they were probably a technician of some kind. Like I say, they had entry to the property they're in, inspector, whatever the situation may be. But again, the house is totally junk now,
Yep.
and it's disgusting. It really is. The point is, we are there to protect and preserve the property, not go shopping, not get ourselves a new TV. You want a new TV? Go buy one. Let me give you another quick story too, in case anybody wondering. So I knew of a contractor. I did not. I knew him. We weren't best buddies or anything like that. But anyway, so he went in. He went into a property. He's like, "Oh wow, that's a really nice couch, love seat combination." So he went out and got a love seat. It was a couch, and this property was down in Maryland. I think he stole something else from a property. He told me after the effect, by the way. I was not part of it. But anyway, so point being is that he said, I'll never take another thing from the property. I'm like, well, because it's theft? He's like, no. I'm like, well, why? Because when he brought all this stuff home, had bed bugs. This is when we had that big bed bug craze years ago. He had to spend $7,000 to have his house fumigated. I said, boy, that was a smart move, wasn't it?
Nothing's worth that. Nope.
Yeah, nothing's worth that.
Nope.
But again, remember, it's theft. Do you want that? You want that on your record? Because the neighbors do call the cops. Neighbors do. I had one property not too long ago where I had the police called on me, and I'm like, how you doing? I'm just here doing X, Y, and Z. Oh yeah, the neighbor just called, wants to check things out. Oh, no problem. Look, here's my work order. Here's my shirt. You know what I mean? Here's my truck. Here's my tools. Come in the house. I'll show you what I'm doing. I'm working for the bank. You can call this number here to verify anything you need. I'm here for a job. He's like, yeah. People were coming in here and they were supposed to be working on the house, and they were stealing stuff from the house. And yeah. We go into initial secures thinking, it's ours forever. Let me give you another perfect little story. Went to a house that was vacant. There was nothing in the house besides knickknacks. No furniture, no clothing, no nothing to that effect. And do the initial secure. And literally like a week later, it's returned keys to owner. So I had to meet the owner there, and she explained the situation. Basically, this was one of those where they were renting the house out. They got into a little bit of financial issues. Hey, it happens to everybody. And they missed some payments because they didn't have a renter in there. They already had another home, and they were dealing with the situation. But the point is, a week later, if someone would have went in there and took some of the knickknacks or took some of the paint or the siding or whatever, or the lawnmower, the push mower, weed whacker, and leaf blower that was in the shed, the person came back a week later. What would that look like? You just remember, the national clients have records. This is why we have the Aspen ID numbers. That's why we have the ABC numbers. You know what I mean? It lets people know when you're there and how you're there. And remember, that is one of those things for that. And don't think that you're the only one going into these properties. Please don't think you're the only one going into these properties. Don't think that you're going to put something in the corner and somehow it's going to magically, be yours. The biggest thing in this industry is do your job, move on. We are so busy. We don't have time to steal or to root or to go shopping because we're busy. Oh, wait, yeah, it's also ethics and rules of the business. But, that's what I'm saying is that, if you have to rely on income to where what you're stealing, go find a different job, because this industry is going to get very busy very, very soon. We are kind of in our pricing, which we're going to talk about more in future programs, the great pricing reset of 26, as we're going to call it. So the beginning of the year, we went through the great preservation collapse of 26 when HUD was redoing their fraud and redoing their thing. And now we are getting into certain markets are aggressively dropping pricing because of overstimuli, because of over inventory. So again, we're going to see what's going to happen here, but this industry is going to get busier very, very quickly. So you ain't got time to go through the drawers. Get your job done and move on, so that way you can go get more work. And that's one kind of the biggest thing. It also gets into liability, and that's why, again, I will bring my cool little camera back up for the umpteenth time in this show, is liability. Because you do have those contractors out there that rob these houses and steal from these houses on the regular. You want to make sure that your name, your brand, you are protected. And this is why picture, camera. These things will help prevent any confusion or liability, because this little thing is the witness that will never lie. You cannot make this thing lie. So if you took something, you know it. And that's why, again, our crews wear these things, because of those kind of contractors that just go through and rip things off. But, documentation and liability are on initial secures are some of the key things. Camera setups, pictures, we tag those rooms, we put the notes in, so that way we can get the maximum amount of bids. But then also, liability-wise, which I'll let Mary get into because she loves this one, is chargebacks. Chargebacks. Companies do charge you back. Read your contracts. There are a few worse than others, by all means. And we're not talking about you didn't do the job right. You didn't feather the drywall repair to a perfect smooth mirror finish. No. The liability that certain companies push on, and which is another large problem in our industry, is they basically, if you don't report it, they charge you back. So, Mary, I will let you end the show with our chargeback stories.
We haven't had a whole lot of these.
We've had a few. Nothing much. We had a few.
We've had a few. I would have to say the biggest one, if it's the one I think you're talking about, is the window.
Yep.
The window. Okay, so we had been going to this property, and we did document it on, I believe it was the initial secure.
Yes, but that was done through another client.
Yes, it was done through another client.
Right, it was done through a regional client, not a national client.
Yes. So but the point is, it
was reported. Documented. They knew it. They knew it.
They knew. So, and we had many different contractors there, and it was something that it was a window, and the frame, the windowsill and stuff had rotted out, and it was falling apart, and it was in a hallway, and usually everybody would go up the steps, take the picture, move on to the room to the right or to the left. Nobody ever got up close and personal with the window. Well, it got to the point to where the window was about to fall out. So
let me interrupt you here real quick. For my own justification, that guy ripped that window apart. So let's not even say it was about ready to fall out. That took force.
That's what the client, we'll say that's the client's word. The window is about to fall out. Okay.
That's because the guy was yanking on it for an hour just to find something. So yeah, let's make sure we justify it.
So the inspector went in, he made his report, gave it to the client. Client came back and was like, "You've been here, you haven't reported this. You need to go out and fix this, or you will be charged back." So we did the right thing. They're like, "There's no need to charge us back. We'll go get everything that we need. We will go out and we will fix it at cost. No problem. Get it done." We went out and we fixed it. I don't know how many weeks later, we were then charged back, even though we fixed this in February, maybe.
It was cold. Yes.
It was cold. It was at the beginning of the year. Yeah. 3-4 months later, we get a chargeback for the work that we went and did at cost, paid for the materials, did everything, for all of the fines that were accrued because of it after the window had already been replaced.
So they charge us for interest, they charge us for legal fees, they charge us for holding costs, they charged us for every little thing possible
Yes.
because it wasn't reported. But the best part is that when we actually get on the phone with all these people, we're like, hey, yeah, we told you, you guys knew about it under this work order because we know the same people. We knew that you knew. And what did they say, Mary?
I don't remember that part.
Nothing. That's what they said. It's your responsibility to report.
And we did it. And we
Well,
did.
we reported underneath a
And
different client. So they literally went through and found all of these. They went through probably a million and a half pictures and said, "Oh, you didn't bid it. It's your fault." I'll give you another story. I think I've told you this one too, Mary. So I had a client needed a grass cut done in Delaware. We're in Pennsylvania. Delaware's across the street. So we go there, and this yard is like the size of your car. You know, it's not a big yard. It's a row home. There's nothing to it. It's a 5-minute push cut, and be done. This particular client required internal inspections. And I go through personally, and I train all the employees. I train subcontractors. So that way I want things done my way. And my way is, you know, it works. You know, it's not perfect, but it works. So we're taking pictures of this house, and literally, you know, we go to one corner, we take a picture, go to one corner, take a picture of the ceiling, and there's literally like a piece of ceiling, which is about, you know, maybe two sides the pieces of paper that was just in the cross. It's just in the cross of the photographs, the view of the lens. It was just, this area was not there. We left. And my people are trained. They know if they see staining, we take pictures, we mark it, we measure it. They know how to do their job. So this was also a very seasoned veteran crew too. So I knew everything was good. 2.5 years later, they called us up. The client called us up and was like, "Hey, you owe us a roof, $7,000. Squeeze me? Huh? You didn't report damage because it wasn't there. Well, yeah, there's damage here. Here's a photograph. Where's this at? Give me a broader general picture." And it's this huge mold spot in the ceiling from a roof leak. And it's towards the eve, so probably we had really bad snow. So probably what happened was, you know, we had an ice dam, snow built up, dropped down in, and, you know, caused the wetness. But the point is that when we were there in the summertime, because we missed this little tiny spot in our cross of photographs of our lens, somebody went through 22 billion photographs and found the one that justified it, and then charged us back $7,000 for a roof. And of course, we appealed it, but it's like, you know, it's like government auditing themselves. It doesn't work out. It always seems to, everyone's innocent. But you know, again, we filed the appeals. We did everything. We're like, hey, you know, we're like, oh no, you were at fault. Well, can you show us the pictures right after that on the next grass cut? Can you show us the pictures before on the grass cuts? We did this grass cut here on the 5th. Can you show us the last picture, the last grass cut of the month prior, or maybe the grass cut after us? Because we've never been to the property again. And 2.5 years later, they're like, "Oh yeah, by the way, you owe us a front roof." And unfortunately, that's our industry, and that's another big thing too, where we need to stop working for companies like that and let them just fizzle out, because they know better. They know better. That kind of spot doesn't happen overnight. I'll give you another perfect story, and then we're going to wrap it up. So we all use, so there's a contracting company out of Ohio. I talked to the owner of the company personally several times, and he explained, this is a very national client. He was doing work for the biggest one. So he goes out there, and up towards the Great Lakes area in Ohio, they did a roof job. Cool. Professional roofer, everything's good, everything's great, woohoo. And I was good. A couple months later, client calls and like, "Hey, you remember that roof over there at 555 Main Street you did?" "Oh, yeah. What's up?" "You owe us a new roof. We're going to charge you back $30,000. "Why? What's wrong with the roof? I don't understand." No. Yeah, you owe us a new roof. Would you like us to take those payments out of one singular check, or would you like us to do multiple checks? No. You wait a minute. I'm going to get my roofer out there. We're going to do a drive-by. We're going to find out what's going on. Called up his roofer. Hey, roofer, you remember that house over there at 555 Main Street you did? Yeah. Well, they say I owe them a new roof. They're going to charge me back $30,000. You need to get your butt out there and tell me what's going on. Roofer goes out there and he calls the preservation company. I was like, yep, you need a new roof. He's like, well, you better explain that to me because I paid you to put a roof on. You're the one that did it. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Roofer's like, calm down, calm down. Yes, you need a new roof on this house, but so does 10 other houses in the neighborhood because a hurricane, windstorm, cyclone, whatever came in and ripped the roofs off of these houses. So the preservation contractor's like, ha ha ha, I got the nationals. Hi, national? Yeah, yeah, screw you. I'm not putting a roof on. That's an act of God. It's not covered under any kind of warranty. You had a hurricane come through here. I can't control that. That's not my problem. The roof we put on was perfectly fine, and there's not a thing that we could have done. We couldn't have nailed it differently. We couldn't have done anything differently that would have stopped this roof from flying off the house. And by the way, I sent you pictures of this one plus 10 other houses and the mapping location, and I even sent you the weather reports. I sent you everything you need. I'm not paying for this. 5 minutes, all the email happened. Next day, call up. Yeah, so in regards to your chargeback, would you like that taken out of this week's check, or do you want us to take it out of many checks? He's like, what are you talking about? I'm not paying this. I refuse. We can just terminate your account and just take it out. This company made $10 million a year. Had multiple families, contractors under their belts. They literally covered the entire state of Ohio for this national company. And this national company said, screw you and all your hard work. We don't believe in act of God. It must have been your fault. We're charging you back. And again, if you think about it, you're making, hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars. Do you want to jeopardize all of that? But the national company probably sent in another roofer, probably paid that roofer the worst price possible, probably got the worst contractor possible, paid them very little and pocketed the rest of the money. That is what we need to change as an industry. That's what we need to change. And we are boots on the ground. Without you, without me, without Mary, without those boots, nothing happens. And that's what the national companies need to realize, that this needs to be a relationship working together, not a lord or king ruling over the land. And that's where good quality contractors need great training, need to learn how to navigate the system to find the best price possible on items. And when certain circumstances change and these companies turn greedy, we just say, no, thank you. Have a wonderful day. And then when the offshores call and be like, hey, buddy, we have a job for you. We pay you $10. You know what you do? You say no. Because, again, these companies are just continually taking the money out of the system. But, again, the system is broken, sure, but it can be fixed. But it takes people like us to vocalize. It takes people like us to negotiate. Everyone's just trying to make as much money as possible. That's why we're in business. But that's what you need to do, is say no. That's really all it is. And at the end of the day, when those companies charge back, no problem. Deal with it and make the proper choices that you need to make for your business, like this gentleman did, or this company did in Ohio. They're like, well, it's like this. I'm not going to turn away $10 million this year because of this. What he did was that he upped his prices. He upped his bidding points a little bit, just a little bit, so it wasn't noticeable enough, but he was regaining his money. And he did such a high volume, it didn't take him long to get the money back. It's taking the shovel to the mountain. It's going to take a while, but eventually you'll bring the mountain down. So, again, it's one of those things. Fight the battles that need to be fought and walk away from the ones that need to be walked away from, and get your money one way or another. But again, the property preservation industry is one of those industries that you will never need to advertise for if you know what you're doing. You will never need to try to find work. The work is plentiful. The work is there. And that's the key thing. There is plenty of opportunities here, no matter where you're at, no matter what state you're in. There is plenty of opportunities out there because foreclosures happen all across the country. This is just, it happens. We are the car repo people of houses, as I always tell people. The 4Ds that drive our industry: death, disease, divorce, disaster. One of those 4 reasons is why properties go vacant. And at the end of the day, somebody needs to deal with the situation. It is the mechanization and industrialization of our industry, which has kind of caused some of the problems. And a lot of it, too, is greed. And that's where, there are plenty of ways to make money. You don't have to go to the large national companies to make money, which we will also talk about in upcoming shows, too, where to find the work, where to get the work. So with all that being said, thank you all very much for your time. We do appreciate everything and hanging out with us for another hour on your wonderful Sunday. We do look forward to, answering any responses. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. With that.
Yeah, it seems like a perfect place to take a break for the show this week. We'd like to thank you guys for joining us. And if you enjoyed the show, please give us a like on the video. It really helps us out. And if you have a story of your own, let us know in the comments. Or if you want to vent about the industry, please join our Facebook group. You can share all your tales on our Facebook group and share with other people that are in the industry as well. Check out our website at propertypresinsiders.com for all our shows, notes, clips, and links to our social media. So until next week, we'd like to thank you for joining us, and we will see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending time with us. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to follow us and share it with your friends. Got questions? Go to our website, propertypresinsiders.com, and join our Facebook group. We'd love to hear from you.